Amazing. Clear. And I'm also going to just mute everybody. Thank you. Okay. So before everybody joined, Marika said that, so this is the grand finale. So it is the last Shiur that we're going to be doing now for a while. I don't think it's the finale. It's not like the series finale is the television production show. We're all coming back. We never stop reading the Torah. So in Yetz Hashem, we'll be back at a future date. I don't know exactly the date, and have an opportunity to continue learning. So the Parsha that we're going to learn tonight, of course, is called Parsha Shlach Lecha. This is the Parsha in which everything turns bad. Like so much goes wrong in this Parsha, unfortunately. And you and I, who are sitting here wherever we are, enjoying our well-being and listening to the Shiur, in some ways, our present history is affected by this Parsha. This is the Parsha in which Moshe sends the Meraglim to reconnoiter, to scout out the land of Israel. It was clearly Moshe's expectation, that they were momentarily going into the land of Israel. From where they are in the desert, where this story takes place, they are only days away from reaching Israel. They're below Israel. They're now sort of moved more north of Egypt. They're moving a little bit more north, and they're just days' journey away from Israel. And Moshe was entirely certain that the glorious future of the Jewish people was going to begin as soon as they crossed the border into Israel. You can just imagine the joy. They heard God's promise in Egypt when they were still slaves. The 5 languages, V'hotzeti, V'hitzalti, V'ga'alti, V'lakachti, V'hedveti. I'm going to take you out from under the burdens of Egypt, and I'm going to save you, and I'm going to redeem you. I'm going to take you to me, and I will be your God, and you'll be my nation. And the last of the 5, V'heveti, and I will bring you into the land. And they're this close to this. And like, it takes your breath away to think about what the future of the Jewish people might have been had they actually gone straight into the land of Israel. What parts of our sad and suffering past would have been bypassed altogether? We would look different. I don't mean physically, but the nature of Jewish history, maybe the nature of the Jewish people, would be completely altered. But that's what was happening. And Moshe believed that that was going to be imminent. But the story unfolds. Now, just to remind everybody, the amazing thing about the way in which the Torah was written, it was written, as the Chachamim say, impoverished in some places and rich in others. What that means is that sometimes single events and stories and episodes are recorded in multiple places in the Torah. Each place may have a detail or a few details that the other place didn't have. And so to know about the whole story, you need to look at all the different places in which the story is mentioned. So that's true for Parshat Shlach Lecha. So I know we're encountering the story for the first time. And so we're reading about the spies, and Moshe's giving them a charge of what to do and their return and all the consequences. But it's not the only place it's mentioned. The other place it's mentioned is in Sefer Dvarim, 40 years later, 40 years after, because you probably remember that because of the sin of the spies, in his anger, Hashem said the proper judgment, the proper response to your not wanting to enter into the land of Israel is to tell you, that's true, you will not enter in the land of Israel. And those people who accepted upon themselves the negative reports and did not want to enter the land of Israel, they died in the desert. And for that to happen, God had to hold back the entry by 40 years. By 40 years. Now, if we just push the fast forward button 40 years, we get the Sefer Dvarim. Sefer Dvarim begins 40 years after all of these events. Moshe knows that his end is approaching, and in a period of 5.5 weeks, Moshe states the entire content of the book of Dvarim. So Sefer Bereshit, of course, covers like huge swaths of time from the creation, from nothing to the creation, to Yaakov and his children moving down to Egypt. Sefer Shmot, the liberation, Sefer Vayikra, and Sefer Bamidbar documents the period of time from the Jews being in Egypt, leaving Egypt, and reaching the Jordan River on the brink of entering the land of Israel. That period took 40 years. But within 5.5 weeks, at the very end, Moshe states and says the entire book of Parim. And then he passes away at the end of Sefer Parim. But amongst the things that he says, he highlights some of the things that happened in the 40 years. And one of the things he highlights is the story of the Meraglim, as you can imagine, because this was a transformative moment, not for the glory of the Jewish people, but it was a transformative moment. It changed the course of the history. And he talks about it, and he says the following. He says that unlike the way in which the story is presented here, so in chapter 13, verse 2, I'll begin, by the Ber Hashem Moshe Lemor, and Hashem spoke to Moshe, saying, listen to this pasuk. Shlach locha anashim v'yaturu et eretz Canaan, asher ani noten livnei Yisrael, ish echad l'matei avutav, tishlachu, kol nasivahem. Send forth men, if you please, and let them spy out the land of Canaan that I will give to the children of Israel. 1 man each from his father's tribe shall you send, everyone a leader among them. So the first 3 words, shlach lecha anashim, send. Now lecha literally means for you. The translation or interpretation in the stone is if you please. So send for you, send if you please, people to spy out the land. So it sounds like God speaks to Moshe and says, okay, Moshe, here's the next step. Here's what you have to do. But that's not the way it unfolded. In Sefer Devarim, Moshe says that the people went to Moshe and they asked to send spies. The people initiated the idea to send spies. Now, this was a fearful people, a people uncertain of themselves, uncertain of the future, maybe not entirely faithful in God, possibly, but maybe they just wanted some tactical surveillance information. It's not a bad thing. Going into a strange country, knowing that you may encounter enemies, it's not such an unbelievably bad idea. Let's just send in a little bit of a group to spy, to figure out what it is, so when we cross, we'll all be ready. So Hashem responds to Moshe, says, look, if the people think that that's what they want, then our Parsha begins. Shlach lecha anashim. So what does the word lecha mean? Now, if you remember, one of the things we've talked about a lot in the study of Chumash is every word has a meaning. So if a pasuk could be written without a word and its meaning stays intact, then you have to pause and figure out why did the Torah explicitly include a word that was quote unquote seemingly unnecessary. There's nothing unnecessary in the Torah, be it a word, be it a letter. So now let's take a look again at this pasuk. Shlach lecha anashim, and delete the word anashim. Shlach anashim, send people and let them spy out the land. Makes sense. So what's lecha mean? Lecha is emphasizing that Hashem is saying to Moshe, look, if you, the people, and you, their leader, want to do this, I'm giving you permission. Shlach lecha anashim, go ahead and do it. I'm not forbidding it. I'm certainly not requiring it. But if you want to go ahead and do it, then Hashem says, I'm going to give you the hechsher, I'm going to give you the stempel. It's okay to do. And therein lies the beginning of what unfortunately is a pivotal moment in which the people unfortunately make a mistake. I have to say something. I say this every year, but I find it so fascinating. The one of the classical commentaries that's always found in Midrash Gedolot is Rabbi Ephraim Lomshitz's commentary to the Torah called the Shiur. Prolific thinker, creative thinker. And in what is a really long commentary to the first part, these 3 words, Shlach lecha anashim, he gives different ideas, and then he hits his last idea, which is really fascinating. And he says, Shlach lecha anashim. Now, up until now, I really stressed the meaning of lecha means. If you want to do it, go ahead. You have to. It's a voluntary Shlach lecha anashim. But the Kli Yakar, after having explained that in other parts of the pasuk, goes to the next word and says anashim. So in Hebrew, anashim sometimes means people, but it could also mean men. Now the word anashim can refer to a group, but it is etymologically correct to say that the word anashim refers to men, and as you know, the word in Hebrew for women would be nashim. And so the Kli Yakar, Rabbi Ephraim Lunchitz, says something fascinating. He says, Hashem said, Shlach l'cha anashim, on purpose. He says, look, if you want l'cha, if you want to send anashim, men, I'm giving you permission. What do you mean? Like, what's the point? Kli Yakar says that Hashem is actually telling Moshe, I think it's not such a good idea to send men. The people who probably should you send are the women. What? Says yes. The Kli Yakar says it would have been a strategic plus to send women, because if you take a look at the Tanakh, especially a little later on in Sefer Bamidbar, it's the women who hold the land of Israel so dear that they would never ever come back with a report that would have been negative and would have been demoralizing to the Jewish people. They would have embraced the land and seen its positive qualities. And so the Kli Yakar says that's one of the meanings of the word anashim, to distinguish between the men's ambivalence towards the land of Israel and its place for the Jewish people, and the women's wholehearted love of it. You probably remember a little later on, there's the question of Bunot Tzlofchad. These are 5 daughters born to their father, Tzlofchad, and because of the way in which the Torah establishes the laws of inheritance, they were concerned that should they marry men out of their own tribe, then the land that they would have inherited from their late father Tzlofchad would then become part of their husband's property, and the land that they would have had as inheritance in the land of Israel would be lost to their husbands and not to them. What does it show? It shows that these women love the land of Israel so much they don't want to give it up. We want our land. This land, you promised this to our father. Moshe, God, this land was the land of our father. We want this land because we hold it so dear. We cherish it. We embrace it. We don't want to lose it. So they raised the question about how women who are married to men outside of the tribe, what's the laws of inheritance. But the point is that's an example in Sefer Bamidbar of the love of women for the land of Israel. So now let's move a little bit forward and take a look here. So the Torah tells us that all the people that were selected are not stunned, guys who sort of, they raise their hands. Who wants to go? Okay, I'll go. Nobody wanted to go, so they picked the 12 guys who unfortunately walked out of the room and they were picked. No, according to the Torah, these are kol nasibam. These are significant people. These are people of position. These are people of status. So I want to take a look at Pasuk Tet Zayin with you. Here's what it says. After going through the names of all the Meraglim, all the spies, Eilish Shmot HaAnashim Asher Shalach Moshe Lator Et Haaretz, Vayikra Moshe LeHoshea bin Nun, Yehoshua. So in the section that I haven't read, it's a list of all of the spies, their names, and where they come from. The Torah, tribe by tribe. The Torah tells us that for Matei Ephraim, the tribe of Ephraim, just a reminder, of course, that Yosef was one of the 12 sons of Yaakov. But we know from Parsha Vayichi, way back in the end of Sefer Breshit, when Yaakov was dying, he turned to Yosef and he gave him a bracha. And he said, Yosef, you will not be an individual Shevet. I am gifting, as it were, to your Shevet 2 portions, one to Ephraim and one to Menashe. So there is no independent portion of the land of Israel associated with Shevet Yosef. Rather, Shevet Yosef becomes Matei, the Shevet of Ephraim, and Shevet Menashe. So that means each one of them sent their own spy, their own Nasi, to be part of its mission. So from Shevet Ephraim was Hoshea bin Nun, He Vav Shin Ayin, Hoshea bin Nun. At the end of this list, and before the mission starts, the Torah in Pasuk Tet Zayin says, here are the names, after listening, here are the names of all the men that Moshe sent to spy out the land. Vayikra Moshe LeHoshea bin Nun, and Moshe called Hoshea, the son of Nun, he called him Yehoshua. So, but it's not his name. His name is Hoshea. But Moshe changed his name. Erev sending them out, just before they left, Moshe added a letter to Hoshea. Moshe added a letter to Hoshea bin Nun's name. He added a Yud at the beginning of the name and said, Mazel Tov, I'm giving you a new name. Your name from now on is going to be Yehoshua. And it was. It was Yehoshua. Okay, so pretty clear that that's going to be one of those red flags where we're all going to say, whoa, like what's going on here? And why that? So Rashi, who's holy Rashi, the brilliant Rashi, tells us what's with the Yud, and Rashi says this, quoting a Gemara in Masechet Sota, Nitpalel alav. So Moshe David, on behalf of Yehoshua, don't forget Yehoshua was not just anybody. Yehoshua was Abraham, was Moshe's very trusted servant who always stayed with him, never left his tent, really dedicated his entire life to learning from Moshe, from watching every move he made, listening to everything he taught, not because he necessarily expected to become the leader, but maybe he understood that he had a moment to be in the presence of greatness and he didn't want to give up a second of it. So therefore, after knowing that Moshe is going to be one of the spies, Nitpalel alav, so Moshe prays for him, Ka Yoshiacha Me'atzat Meraglim. And the word Ka is two letters, Yud Hey, which is one of the names of God. Hallelujah. The Yud Hey at the end is the name of God. So, meaning that name, Yud K, that those two letters, that name of God, which begins with the letter Yud. So Moshe prayed for him. And one of the ways in which he attached this prayer to Yehoshua with asking God that this prayer should always go with Yehoshua. What was the prayer? Hashem should save you from Atzat Meraglim, from the plot of the Meraglim. Now, there's a lot of questions associated with this Rashi. One of them being, Moshe knew what was going to happen. You mean he had a sense of the debacle that's going to happen when they came back, and then he sent everybody? And if he sent everybody and wanted to help, why did he only send say the prayer that would help Yeshua? A lot of different questions. So I want to share with you an explanation of Rabbi Yitzchak Genak. He died about 60 years ago. You may remember the name Genak. It's actually a name still associated to this day with OU. And before Rabbi Taylor came, I don't know if anybody remembers this, we actually had a Proba Shabbos with a Rabbi Genak, who was the descendant of the Rabbi Yitzchak Genak, whose comment I'm going to share with you tonight. He wrote his ideas on Chumash, compiled them in a collection called Birkat Yitzchak. So in his commentary, Birkat Yitzchak, Rabbi Genak reminds us of a midrash. And what's the midrash? Now, Rashi doesn't quote the entire midrash here, but he alludes to it. But in the fullness of the rabbinic midrash, the Torah tells us, so what is this yud? Like, where did it come from? Like, Hashem takes a yud, sticks it in front of Hoshea's name, and now he changes his name. So here's the midrash. I'm going to read you the midrash in its entirety. The midrash tells us that the yud that came in the beginning of the name Hosea came from another name, from another biblical character. It came from Abraham's wife's name. Who was Abraham's wife? You'll say Sarah. Well, that wasn't always her name. Remember the beginning of the story when we introduced in Parsha Lech Lecha to Abraham to Sarah? Sarah's name was not Sarah. Sarah's name was Sarai. It didn't have a hey at the end. It had a yud at the end. Say a sin, resh, yud. So here it is. Amar Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai stated, Yud shenatala kadosh baruch hu miSarai, the Yud that Hashem took from Sarai, haya tas uporeach lipnei chiso shel kadosh baruch hu. This Yud, after Hashem, and we know this happened because Hashem says to Abraham, your name will not be Avram, your name will be Avraham, and your wife's name will no longer be Sarai, it'll be Sarah. So you're taking away a letter. So what happens to that letter? Where does it go? So the Midrash suggests this Yud is sort of floating around the Kisei Kavod in front of Shemayim. And the Yud has it's got its own personality. It's got its own self-interest. And the personality of the Yud goes to Hashem and says, Ribbono Shel Olam, Master of the world. Bishvil shanik tanasha botiyot tani sarat tzedeket. So wait a second. The name Sarai has 3 letters. Sin, Resh, Yud. What? Because I'm the tiniest of all letters in the Hebrew alphabet, which the Yud is. What? I'm an Osvarf? Because I'm the smallest, you think I'm the least important, and that's why you ripped me away from Sarai's name and put a hey in my place. The Yud is complaining. Said, where's now my spot? I was attached to the name of a great tzaddikat, a great righteous woman. She's the mother of all the Jewish nation. And now you took me away. It's as though the letter says this isn't fair treatment. Amar lo hakadosh baruch hu. So Hashem says to the letter Yud, L'sha'avar hayita mishma shel nekeva u'v'sofan shel otiyot. Before, yes, you were attached to the mother of Israel, and you were the last letter. You were the last letter, 100% true. But now, now I'm attaching you to the name of a male, and I'm putting you not in the back, I'm putting you in the beginning. So it's almost as though the Midrash is saying there's a little bit of an upgrade here. What are you coming with complaints? I'm upgrading your status. You're now in business class or first class. Before you were economy, not anymore. Now you're moving ahead. You got a good deal out of this. I'm going to continue. Shene'emar vayikra shmo leHoshea binun Yoshua. So that's where did the Yud go? So this Midrash says it came in our pasuk, and it created the Yud in the beginning of the name Yoshua. Amar Rav Mana l'shavar hayta Sarai la'atzma. So the Gemara quotes an opinion of Rabbi Mana. Listen to this. This is really an interesting idea. In the past, before this change, Sarai hayta Sarai la'atzma. Sarah was really turned on herself. She was self-absorbed, or she only had impact on herself. We'll get to in a second. But now she's a Sarah that affects the entire world. So for those of you who know Hebrew a little bit, you know that there's a possessive structure in Hebrew. So, for example, my ball is HaKadur Sheli. Sheli. The apple, tapuach sheli. The bread, lechem sheli. So the word sheli has 3 letters, shin, lamed, yud. But in Hebrew, it's possible to contract 2 words and to make 1 word out of them. But in order to contract, sometimes letters have to be dropped. So lechem sheli, it's 2 words. I'm going to make it into 1 word, would be lachmi. Lachmi. So the shin lamed of sheli gets dropped, but what remains is the yud. In other words, the letter yud indicates that it's something about me, but only me. This is my bread, my ball, lachmi, kaduri, shulchani, sifri. All of these things indicate that it is now a word that indicates my possession, my interest, my dominion, my ownership of something. So says Rav Mana, when Sarai was called Sarai, ending with a yud, it meant that she was just Sarai for herself. She really didn't have a sort of sphere of influence that went beyond her own tent. Now that I removed the yud, and became Sarah, her influence became bigger and bigger and bigger. Interesting idea. So now let's go back to Rabbi Genak and how he sort of puts these pieces together. So he says, I heard from his Rabbi. Rabbi Genak was a Talmud of Rabbi Yosef Dochalevi Soloveitchik, Rosh Yeshiva University. The Genak family is very well known in New York circles, especially in YU circles. Said Rabbi Genak was the beloved Talmud of his Rabbi, Rabbi Yosef Dochalevi Soloveitchik. And the Rabbi Soloveitchik, explained the following. The yud indicates something private and something personal. That through the yud, it indicates limitation. My chair is kisi. Therefore, Sarai was only involved with her own interest. When she became Sarah, that interest became wider, and Avraham became Avhamam Goyim, and she, like him, also was given the opportunity to have a far-reaching influence. Now, Akshav Tehehi Sarah Ulamat Zot, Moshe, and then Moshe, keeping this idea in mind, Moshe did what? He took that yud. And what does the yud represent? Small domain. It's about him. It's about her. What did Moshe do? He took the yud that had originally limited somehow Sarai's influence and kept it just within her. Moshe deliberately gave that Yud and stuck it and gave it to Yehoshua. Why? Kedei shelo tushva da'ato hapratit hatuva mehalach rucham hashlili shel mipnei rabim. That Moshe had a sense that this is not going to go well. He thought this was going to go south. But he also recognized, he knew who his beloved Talmud was. And he saw his midot. He saw everything that he was giving up. He saw all of the things that he was prepared to sacrifice for Moshe, for Torah, and for the Jewish people. And to have him now be subjected to inappropriate influences that could somehow harm him, Moshe tried to figure out what to do. Interestingly enough, Moshe's choice was not to say, Yehoshua, you're not going, we're getting somebody else. That wasn't a choice. Yehoshua was the head of the tribe. He needed to go. He needed to go. He needed to be out there and in some ways risking it. That wasn't an option, not to risk it. The option had to be how to strengthen him. And how to strengthen him was to strengthen him with the Yud of Sarah. And so that's why, according to Rabbi Gemak and Rabbi Soloveitchik, really, the Yud was given to Yehoshua. Why? Because the Yud represents strengthening yourself, yes, to the exclusion perhaps of other people. And yes, Moshe wanted Yehoshua to be strengthened against the forces of the other 10 Meraglim that could possibly have harmed him spiritually and maybe even beyond. It's a fascinating midrash for so many different reasons. But one of the reasons is, I think, is where do we get our strength from? Where do we get our strength from? It's not the letter Yud that we get our strength from, because this midrash, I think, is really saying something much more deep than just the letter Yud. What I think the midrash is saying is Yehoshua's strength came from the maternal lineage. It came from the strength of the Jewish people often is transmitted through our women, through our mothers, in so many different ways. And if you think about biblical Jewish history, at least biblical Jewish history, think how many moments the survival of the Jewish people was in the hands of women. And it was they who saved us. Starting with, for example, Sarah herself. When Abraham couldn't see what Ishmael was doing to Yitzchak, it was Sarah who saw it right away. And she was the one who said, this is no good, we got to stop this. Abraham didn't want to listen to her until Hashem says, Abraham, listen to her. She's right. You're missing it. And then there comes to Yitzchak. Yitzchak, of course, marries Rivka. Rivka sees, she gets the difference between Yaakov and Esau right away. The Torah creates a more equivocating description of Yitzchak's assessment of his two sons. Did he know? Did he not know? There's a lot of opinions on both sides. But Rivka knew exactly. She got it. And she was bold. She did something so bold to switch the brachot. I'm not going to go into that. But her bold actions, what did her bold actions do? Her bold actions probably saved the Jewish people. And then you get to Yaakov, who married Rachel and Leah. And what they did between the two of them to make sure that Yaakov's future of being the father of the 12 tribes was secure. But we can just go all down the line. Who's the greatest prophet of all time? Moshe Rabbeinu. Unarguable, right? Correct. Who gave him his name Moshe? It wasn't his mother. His birth mother, Yocheved, who herself was a great lady because she was one of the two midwives, along with Miriam, who saved the Jewish people. They refused to listen to the king. Had they listened to the king, then all these baby boys would have been, Jewish baby boys would have been drowned and killed. But they said, no, we're risking our lives because it's wrong to do this. So they took a step to save the Jewish people. But when it came time for this woman, the daughter of the king, she saved Moshe. She did. And she was the one who called him Moshe. Okay, so he was a non-Jewish princess and the daughter of an idolater who saves a Jewish baby. Turns out to be Moshe Rabbeinu, but he had Jewish name. Yocheved and Amram didn't call him Moshe. So why are we not using his Hebrew name? Because Hashem said, she saved him. I'm giving her credit. So for all of eternity, every Jewish boy and girl, every person who thinks about who our great prophet is using the name given to him by the non-Jewish woman who risked her life. I'm not going to go through all of Jewish history. But when it comes to this story, Hashem says, Yoshua meaning chizik. And what's the chizik? The chizik is to understand the strength of Jewish women who see clearly, they get it. Sometimes us men, we equivocate, we don't see. Sometimes it takes us longer. And I think maybe Moshe had a sense, we may not have time to work this out. I need somebody who's going to carry with him a bracha and that ability to sort of see through what needs to be seen, to move away the veils, and to have the courage, the guts, to stand up and do what has to be done. Did the bracha work? Apparently it did. Which I think the Midrash then is saying is that we have to be thankful to Sarah Imenu, as it were, whose spiritual legacy to the Jewish people continued to live on them, and I think continues to live on Ad Hayom Hazeh, to this day. Okay, let's go on a little bit more. I want to read Pasuk 18, still in Perek Gimel. So Pasuk 18 in Perek Gimel, I'll read it for you. Vayomer Alehem. This is Moshe now addressing the group of 12 spies who were assigned to this task. They haven't left yet, but Moshe is now giving them their assignment. And what does he say? He says, okay. Okay, here's my assignment. I want you to go. I want you to go into the Negev, and don't forget, they're coming from the south of Israel. So the first part of the country that they're going to encounter is the part that you and I call the Negev. So go north, and you're going to go into the Negev, Valikim et Mahar, and which literally means, and you shall climb the mountain. So they're getting further north. Ureitem, this is verse Yichet now. Ureitem et Har Mahi, ve'et, excuse me, Ureitem et Haaretz Mahi, ve'et ha'am ha'yoshev aleha kechazakhu arafeh, ha'me'atu imrav. I want to translate this. Moshe said to them following: see the land. Okay, I want you to go and I want you to assess things. See the land. How is it? And the people that dwell in the land, is it strong or weak? Is it few or numerous? So, how do you know if the people are strong or weak? What would you be able to see as a spy that would tell you if the people are strong or weak? If everybody's out in their fields farming, you may not really know. Are you going to be looking for military maneuvers? What if there aren't any? So how would you judge the relative strength of the population of Israel at that time? What was Moshe telling them? So Rashi says the following. He says, in judging if whether they're strong or weak, Moshe gave them a measure. I'll read the Rashi. Siman Masarlim. He gave them a sign. This is what you're going to look for. If the population of the land are all living in unwalled cities, that's a sign that they're strong. What does that mean? Because if you don't have a wall around your city, you feel confident. You feel strong. You're not worried. You know that if somebody's going to come and attack you, you're going to beat them. But if the people of the land are all living in walled communities, walled cities, that's a sign that they're weak, that they don't think that they're strong, and they need external support to protect them. That's the sign that Moshe gave them. And he said, now I want you to check this out, and I want you to come back and let me know. Are they strong and living in unwalled communities, or are they weak and living in walled communities? Okay. So the spies come and go and do their thing. Now they come back and they begin the report. So I'm jumping now. I'm jumping to chapter, still same Perek Gimel, but I'm turning to chapter to Pasuk 28, 13:28. Listen to what the report is that the spies get back. Efes ki az ha'am. But the people that dwell in the land, powerful people. Ki efes ki az ha'am hayoshev ba'aretz. The people are strong. Okay, so you now remember the sign that Moshe gave them. Unwalled cities, strong. Walled cities is weak. Okay, now comes the report that the spies actually give. And they say, whoa, ki az ha'am hayoshev ba'aretz, this people, I'm telling you, they are really strong. And the cities, Harim Bitsurot Gedolot Ad Me'od. These are big, strong, fortified cities. And we also saw the offsprings of the giants. What? The people are strong and everybody's living in fortified cities? That's exactly the opposite of the guideline that Moshe Rabbeinu gave them. Moshe Rabbeinu's guideline was unequivocally clear. If they're in walled cities, they're weak. If they're in unwalled cities, it's a sign that they feel strong. Then they probably are strong. They come back and say, oh my God, these people are like monsters. They're so strong. You should see the thickness of the walls around their cities. Oh my gosh. So something is a little bit off. So what's off? So the spies were misled, not by Moshe, but the spies applied a criteria that misled them, but the same criteria that could mislead or did mislead them might also be a criteria that we need to be aware of as well, that potentially Chas v'Shalom could mislead us. Moshe was clear, but when they got there and they looked around, the way they perceived what they saw what they saw, but what they perceived what they saw was different. He wanted them to look not at the walls, but rather the feelings of insecurity and uneasiness that compelled the people to build them. Don't look at the wall. The wall is a sign of fear. I want you to see that. I want you to get a sense of that. That's what Moshe wanted them to do. And contrast that with the confidence of knowing that Hashem is leading us. Hashem is leading us. The God that did everything, that drowned the Egyptians, gives them up. Well, we got the strongest army in the world because nobody else has Hashem's protection. So when you see what's going on and you see a walled city, you should say, oh my God, they're so scared. Oh, well, this is going to be great. They're so scared. We have the ultimate A-bomb. We've got God. Nothing's going to stop it. So again, I've always talked about this. This is not about spies. The spies are dead. We're not in the desert anymore. This is a period that lasted for 40 years and it's gone thousands of years ago. But we read it every single year. And my question every time is, so where are we in the story? What's this story about? It's not just about spies, obviously. It's way more. What's it about? It's about being misled by fortresses of other nations and other cultures. It's what is it that we're going to see? We can be impressed and we can be intimidated by outward appearances of something that looks great and grand and majestic and even confident. And when we see those things, we might begin to feel a little bit less strong. We may feel inferior. We may feel we're not good enough. We don't measure up compared to, look what they got. Oh my gosh, how can we possibly beat them? And like spies, that sometimes we feel ourselves, I haven't read this, but like we're small and tiny, like grasshoppers, especially in light of all these foreign cultures. And I don't know about you, but begin to feel a little bit like that now. Maybe you do as well. With all the flooding of anti-Jewish, anti-Israel sentiment. But even before it turned anti-Jewish, anti-Israel on October 7th, there really was an anti-religion sort of sentiment. There was the feeling of the secularism of society being really, in some ways, its own religion. Nobody wanted to identify it. And sometimes we have to stand up and say, no, our religion is stronger. We've got values that are bigger and better and deeper and brighter, justified and more passionate than any of the secular values that are being advocated by social media and all the other movements in the world. So sometimes we feel that we're so small compared to those citadels. But we need to remember that Hashem is with us, and we have something they don't have. We have the Torah, and this is the year 2024. 2024. We're not supposed to be here. All the other estimates that happened by brilliant historians throughout the ages cannot explain why we're here in 2024. Why? We're a historical anomaly, the smallest minority on the planet practically. We shouldn't be as impressive as we are. We shouldn't be as contributing as much as we are. We shouldn't have so many Nobel Prizes as we are. We should be falling off the face of the earth. Yet, on the other hand, we've made more contributions than many other countries and nations and cultures for all of time. There is no more Byzantine Empire. There's no more Greek Empire. There's no more Roman Empire. It's us. We're here. They're gone. We're here. So sometimes we forget that. And when it looks like we are being overwhelmed by these fortresses around us, we got to remember this story. And we have to remember not to be fooled. Don't be fooled and don't be taken in by what seems to be impressive and maybe imposing displays of superiority. There is nobody that is more superior to us. Not that we are braggers and not that we are arrogant, but we need to understand we're here for a reason. Everybody's here for a reason. And the smallest minority on the planet is the most enduring minority on the planet. And we've contributed disproportionately to everybody else. And the reason we've contributed disproportionately to everybody else is because of the power of Torah. And we need to take pride in that and feel that is our fortress. That is our strength. We need to hold on to it. Okay, so we're going to continue now with Parsha. So in his charge and what he told them to do, Moshe told the spies, okay, I want you to go to the land. I want you to see things, gave them the measure of fortresses. But he also said to them that I want you to bring back some evidence of what the country is like. So you know that when the people went to check it out, they did a lot of traveling and they got to certain places. Vayavo, I'm now reading chapters 13, pasuk 23. Vayavo ad Nachal Eshkol. They got to this Nachal, this stream of Eshkol. Vayichertu misham zimora ve'eshkol anavim echad vayisauhu b'ramot b'shnayim umin ha'rimonim umin ha'te'enim. They arrived at the valley of Eshkol and cut from there a vine with one cluster of grapes and bore it on a double pole, and of the pomegranates and of the figs. Okay, so we're getting a picture of the lush growth in the land of Eretz Yisrael. There's lots of things. There's grapes, there's pomegranates, there's dates. Okay, so let's just stop a second. We may not be farmers, but we read enough of the Torah to know that agriculture plays an important part, not just in this story, but in a part of our ritual. And so one of the halachot that applies only in the land of Israel is something called bikurim. Bikurim comes from the word bichor, which is first. The first fruits of the farmer who's working in the land of Israel. So the Mishnah in Masechet Bikurim, the third parak, the first Mishnah, tells us, so what does that mean, the first fruits? Like, how do you know? So according to the Mishnah, the Jewish farmer had to go into his field, and when the very first sign of the very first ripening of the very first fruits, so for example, this is the Mishnah. So he sees a date that's beginning to the first sign of the blossoming. The eshkol she'biyeker, and now he sees the first cluster of grapes, and rimon, the first cluster of pomegranates that is now coming out. What does he do? Koshro begumi ve'omer harei elu bikurim. So he takes a little red bendela and he ties it up so he can always see and says, these are the bikurim, these are the bikurim. So why does he have to say that? Because we know later on in Parsha Kitavo and Sefer Devarim, we learn the Mishnah, we learned that what we would have to do, the farmer had to take his first fruits to Yerushalayim. And how would he know which his first fruits are? Because he put a sign. That's what he was going to take. They're going to grow. They're going to ripen. Those are the ones he's going to put in his basket. He's going to make his way to Yerushalayim, and in the ritual, he's going to give it to the Kohen in the Beit HaMikdash. Now, do you think it's just a coincidence? Oh, I don't think so. That the fruits that we're talking about in Masechet Bikurim are exactly the first fruits that are mentioned here in the story of the Mirag. The Miraglim brought back fruits. Which fruits did they bring back? Grapes, dates, pomegranates, which are exactly the fruits that the Mishnah says had to be outlined, had to be tied off, had to be marked, and brought later to the Beit HaMikdash. Living in Warsaw in 1883 to 1943 was Rabbi Menachem Zemba. He died in the Warsaw Ghetto in 1943. And he too wrote Divrei Torah. He was a great Talmud Chacham pre-war. Unfortunately, died in Shoah. And he had a fascinating comment about the connection between Bikurim and the story of the Meraglim that we're reading about in this week's Parsha of Shlach Lecha. You know what he says? Listen to this. He says he remembers reading in the Arizal the mitzvot hava'at bikurim, the mitzvah of bringing the bikurim to Beit HaMikdash, mentioned in Sefer Dvarim Parsha Kitavo, itikun l'chet hameraglim. Fascinating idea. Tikun l'chet hameraglim. What is a tikun? Tikun literally means it's a repair. That mitzvot bikurim that became part of the Jewish agricultural rhythm of Israel was instituted as a way of forever, as it were, overcoming the impact of the Chet of the Meraglim. The Meraglim brought back grapes and dates and pomegranates, but they used them as a tool to deflate the nation. They used them as a tool to scare the people. They used them as a visual aid and then said, look, we shouldn't go. But fortunately, 40 years later, Hashem said, okay, we're now going into the land. But we didn't forget what happened. And so it's almost as though the mitzvah of Bikurim, and specifically these three fruits that are directly mentioned not only here, but in the Mishnah as what they should be bringing to the Beit HaMikdash, they're part of it. Now, there's something fascinating here that I want you to remember. When the Bikurim were going to be brought, the Torah tells us in Sefer Dvarim Parsha Kitavo that the Jewish farmer bringing the baskets of dates and pomegranates and grapes needed to make a declaration in the presence of the Kohen. And the declaration that had to be made is one that everybody probably remembers. It begins like this. Arami Oved Avi, an Aramean who tried to destroy my father. And there's 5 psukim, that's all it is. I'm not going to read them now. But suffice it to say that the 5 psukim that had to be said by the Jewish farmer who goes to the Beit HaMikdash with his first fruits of dates, pomegranates, and grapes are the same 5 psukim that form the core of our Haggadah Shel Pesach. The Haggadah Shel Pesach is in its essence an expansion of these 5 psukim. Okay, so now, whoa. What's going on here? So you have to remember that the whole story about Bikurim, like why is that? Why do you have to do the Bikurim? Bikurim is the expression of Hakarat Tov, God's greatness. God's great, and I have to be grateful for God providing me the ability to grow fruit in that and to be sustained and to have this nachas of growing the fruit. And I begin by telling the story of what happened in Mitzrayim. Like, why do I care? I'm a farmer living in Tveria. I make my way to Yerushalayim. I have my fruit. I have my dates. I have my grapes, and I have my pomegranate. I'm giving it to the Kohen. What does Yetziat Mitzrayim have anything to do with me? It has to do with this, that you're standing here today because of a whole chain of Jewish history. You're in the land of Israel. Why? Because of a whole series of events that preceded your birth. And some of those events are joyous, and some of those events are not so joyous. Some of those events have to do with a generation of Jewish men and women who got so scared that they decided not to embrace the land of Israel, and they died in the desert. And the whole story of the grapes and the pomegranates and the dates is a story of people who did not embrace the land of Israel. But you're here. You've lived through that. The Sarah Imenu strength that went through Yehoshua and apparently through others who didn't participate, the next generation. Now you're standing in the Beit HaMikdash with these very same 3 fruits, which were used, unfortunately, for not so good purposes. But here's the thing that the Shulchan Aruch says that's so fascinating. On Pesach, the Shulchan Aruch says the following. The day of the week of the first Seder, whatever it is, the day of the week of the first Seder will always be the same day of the week for Tisha B'Av. That's mentioned by Hilchos Pesach. Say it again to make sure. The Seder is going to happen at the same day of the week that Tisha B'Av is going to happen. Like, it's not exactly a connection that would be so evident. But if the Shulchan Aruch wants us to get that and keep that in mind, that there is some sort of connection, some sort, between the first night of Pesach and Tisha B'Av. Well, what's Tisha B'Av? Tisha B'Av is a rejection of the land of Israel. Tisha B'Av is the story of the Meraglim. That's what this story is. The night in which everybody came back and reported to Moshe Rabbeinu, and they said, "We're not going. It doesn't matter. No dates, no grapes, no pot. Not going." That night where they turned their back on the future of the land of Israel was Tisha B'Av. So it all sort of comes together. Rabbi Zamba is trying to remind us that the Meraglim spoke badly of the land of Israel. And they didn't have the sufficient love for the land to take that next step. And so here we are reading the story, and he says that the Mishnah in Bikurim, which talks about bringing food to the land of Israel, and declaring the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim in all its glory, and talking about bringing us to the land of Israel, that's part of it. We are part of this huge swath of history. And sometimes we forget that. Sometimes we get so caught up in what's happening around us and how it's affecting us that we need to take a step back. And I'm not saying what's affecting us is not serious, and I'm not saying it's not something that we should be talking about and davening about and doing whatever we can about. No, what I'm saying is that we're here in this sort of tide of Jewish history, and our forefathers, I don't know who, and I don't know when, and I don't know where, probably had moments just like ours where they were feeling, oh my gosh, where are we, where are we going? And in moments like this, we have to realize that there may have been parts of our past that were not so glorious, but our present sometimes gives us an opportunity to do a tikkun, to do something that I can't undo the past. Nobody can. There's no time machines. But I might be able to sort of change its impact. I can't take away what happened, but I might have the power to change its impact. And I think that's what the Mishnah Bikurim, and that's what Brinyan Bikurim is trying to say. I can't change the past. Can't change the fact that the Meraglim, they changed Jewish history. They did. They changed Jewish history. I can't unchange it. But I might be able to mitigate its impact on my generation, or on my kids' generation, or on my grandkids' generation, or on your grandkids' generation, or for the generation that I've never met and I will never see. But when the Jewish farmer brings his fruits and he talks about Yetziat Mitzrayim, and he was never in Mitzrayim, and he never met his Zaidi who was a slave. So why are you talking about it? Because we need to remember we're connected like this, and we are part of history. And just like we have to sometimes find out how to mitigate the impact of history and decisions made before us, we need to be very mindful about the decisions we're making today so that future generations are not going to have to do a tikkun for us. It's a bold statement, and sometimes it's a sobering statement, but the thoughtful Jew who understands that we stand always at a crossroads of the past and the future. And that's why we try so hard to think about what the present means and what we should be doing in the present. Okay. I'm going to continue a little bit. So as the Meraglim come back and they tell their story, which is demoralizing and scary, and is intended really to make everybody not want to go to Israel. So the Pasuk says in Pasuk Lamed, Vayahas Kalev et ha'am el Moshe. Kalev silenced the people towards Moshe and said, Alo na'aleh v'yarashnu ota, ki ahonu chala. We shall surely ascend and we will conquer it, for we can surely do it. Again, ascend. Whenever we talk about going to Israel, we always talk about it as Aliyah, regardless of what part of the world you're going from. But this group of people were actually south of Israel, as I said, in the north part of Egypt, and they were literally going north. They're going up. They're going upwards. And so they're saying, everybody else, the 10 other spies are saying, we can't. And hearing this, Kalev tries to quiet them all down, and says, no, we're going to go up. Alo na'aleh. Rabbi Menachem Sion Zaks, who's a rabbi in Chicago, before he made Aliyah to move to Israel. And he's written his Divrei Torah on Chumash and other writings in Pirkei Avot, as well as, on Gemara. And he has an interesting take on this idea of alo na'aleh and what its slightly deeper meaning may be. So in order to understand what he's about to say, he wants us just to remember what Rashi says about those two words, alo na'aleh. Let us go up. Let us go up. This is what Rashi says Kalev had in mind when he's turning to the throngs of people. And he says, alo na'aleh, he says, afil b'shamayim. We can go even up, even to the heavens, V'hu omer asu sulamot v'alusham. And he said, like, make ladders. We can do it. Even if we have to build a ladder to take us to heaven, we could do it. Natzliach b'chol barav. Like, what? Like, what lay behind Kalev's intention? What messaging? Rashi says he's asking for things which would seem to be impossible. Even if we had to build ladders and sort of climb into the heavens, we could do it. Really? So I want you to consider his point, and then he ends with just such a fascinating idea, just a great idea. And he says, yeah, really. Afilu b'shamayim, v'hu omer asu salom, even if it's in the sky. He says, build ladders. We're going to go up, which is Rashi's quote. Ein efsharut la'alot hashamayim af b'sulamot achivuhim. He says, we all know that you can't build a ladder that's going to take you to Shemayim. That's not possible. Everybody knows that. You don't have to be a chacham. You don't have to be a scientist. It's just clear. But bechol zot al ha'adam lasot sulamot bichdei nekarev et ha'aliyah ad kama shezeh efshari lasot b'derech tivim. Says, but it's incumbent upon us to do whatever we can, which is humanly possible, to reach our goal. So yavo hanes, and he says, if we do what we need to do, then beyond the top rung of the ladder, that's where the miracle lies. V'zeh ha'mechuvan, and that's what was behind Kalev's message. He says, look, I can't tell you about tomorrow, but I believe, he says, we have to do what we can do. I can't do more than that. But I believe that if I do 100% of what I can do, that's beyond that miracles happen. If you're going to sit and wait for the miracle because you're going to say to yourself, everything's impossible, you won't do anything, there's no miracle. You have to try to do what seems to be impossible. I'm going to have to try. I can't figure it out. Okay, I'm not sure it's humanly possible, but I'm going to try to maximize my human effort. And a nace will happen only after we reach that level. We got to try. We have to, right? Sometimes we negotiate with ourselves why something can't happen. And we talk ourselves out of trying. It's not possible. I can't do it. It's too hard. I don't know enough. I'm not strong enough. I'm not rich enough. I can't do it. We sometimes negotiate with ourselves why we can't. And Rabbi Menachem ben Sion Sachs is saying, that's what Kalev is trying to fight against. Stop saying you can't. If you're going to have a no growth mindset, there will be no growth. We need growth mindsets. We need our children to have growth mindsets. We need growth mindsets. And unless we understand that, there'll never be a growth mindset. And the miracles that sometimes we want to happen are not going to happen. Because God is not going to say, well, if you're not doing anything, what do you expect more from me than you expect from yourself? No, put out. It's a bold statement. I have to read this last part because this is an amazing part. The Efshar Lomar, and he says, and it's possible. Listen to this, this is so beautiful. Efshar Lomar, Sheh Pasuk, and he quotes a Pasuk in Sefer Shemot. Vayar Yisrael at a Yad HaGedolah Asher Asa Hashem b'Mitzrayim. Do you remember that? It's the scene. They're at the Yam Suf. And the Torah tells us, and we say in davening every single day, 7 days a week, 365 days of the year. Vayar Yisrael Aliyad HaGedolah. God saw the great hand, Asher Asa Hashem b'Mitzrayim. The great hand which Hashem did in Mitzrayim. So when you and I read that pasuk, what's the first association? Well, we're talking about the miracles that God did. Like what miracles? Well, probably the makos and makot bechorot and all of that. That's what the Jews saw. The Jewish people of Israel saw God's great hand in Mitzrayim. Aminu Hashem u'Moshe Avdo, and that's what brought Hashem. That's what brought belief in God. Listen to what Rabbi Zach says. It's amazing. He says this. Mirameis, he says, this might allude to Shebnei Yisrael ra'u et hayad, that the Jewish people saw a hand. It's true. But when we heard Yad HaGdolah, and we're thinking it's the hand of God, he says, maybe it's not the hand of God. So whose hand was it? Et hayad shel Bitya bat Paro. Maybe it was the hand of the daughter of Paro. Shehi pashta et yada leumat tevat haguma lamrot sheyada kitzara mehagia leteva. Whoa, I have to explain this. This is amazing. She's telling us about the story of Moshe in the basket. You remember the story. So his mother puts him in the basket, and Miriam is standing away. And then the Torah tells us that Bat Paro comes down to the Chutz, and she's bathing, and she sees the basket. It says, "Vatishlach et yada," and she reaches forward to get the basket. And so the Midrash says, well, the basket isn't right there. In fact, her hand, as it were, had to miraculously elongate in order for her to reach the basket. I don't know if her hand miraculously elongated. But what is Rabbi Sachs saying? Saying is this, it's an amazing idea. Maybe the Yad HaGdolah that the Jewish people saw, that we need to remember, is not the Yad HaGdolah of God. It's the Yad HaGdolah of who? Bat Paro, the daughter of Paro. What did she do? She's the daughter of Paro. She's the daughter of the king who promulgated the edict that all Jewish baby boys have to be killed. He's the king who hates the Jews. He's the king who's trying to subjugate the Jews. She's bathing in the Nile, and she sees a basket. And obviously, it's going to be a basket not of an Egyptian. So what does she do? She sends forth her hand, and she grabs the basket. She makes an effort to do something extraordinary. And that's the Yad HaGdolah. That's the Yad that we need to see. We need to make that effort. This woman made an effort. Can you believe that? Can you imagine how difficult it must have been? It's not in the Torah, but what negotiations did she go through? What, am I nuts? I'm going to save the Jewish baby. My father's Paro. He's going to, it can't be. I can't be the one to save the Jew because my dad is the guy who's he's the Nazi of all times. He's the guy telling everybody, kill the Jews, kill the Jews. We got to subjugate the Jews. This is Auschwitz, 1943, and Bat Paro is coming and she's saving a Jew. She's Himmler's daughter. What? How is that possible? And yes, Menachem ben Zion Zaks is saying, that's the Yad HaGdolah. That's what we have to do. We have to stop negotiating what's possible, not possible, and believe it is possible. And she believed that it is possible. And we're here learning Chumash today, mentioning Moshe's name, because this daughter of an idolater believed that it was possible and saved this baby that became the greatest Jewish prophet of all time, who changed the face of the Jewish people's history. Wow. What a story. What an amazing idea. And so when Kalev says, oh, we can do it alone, not alone. Kalev is definitely talking to a group of Jews who are in the desert, who are no longer alive. But truth be told, as you know what I'm about to say, he's not talking just to them. He's talking to all of us. And he's saying, alone, not alone. Don't negotiate why you can't. Convince yourself why you can't. And just imagine if all mothers and fathers would put their kids to sleep at night saying, you can be the one. So you can. You can. We had a whole generation of boys and girls, Jewish boys and girls, who had the belief that they have to do the most they can and Hashem will be there to help. What would the Jewish world look like? Wow. I don't know. But I would love to be there to see that. And Yirtz Hashem, if we do what we need to do, if we have the faith that we need to have, if we become the parents we need to become, if we become the neighbors we need to become, if we become the spouses and grandparents and friends we need to become, if we become the Jews we need to become, then Parsha Shlach Lecha next year will not be on Zoom, as I keep saying, will be in Yerushalayim. So I know this is Parsha Shlach Lecha. So Shlach Lecha means go forward, go. So this is our last Parsha class for a while. So I'm going to say to you, Shlach Lecha, go for it. But what am I telling you? Go for it. What I'm telling you is this. You don't have to stop studying Parsha because we're not having Zoom. I'm going to suggest buy one book. I've often spoken about this book. Buy a book on the Parshas, 2 pages. And every week, read something on the Parsha from this book. Even without a shiur, you can learn so much. And it's not this book. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs has a lot of stuff on the Parsha, Covenant and Conversation. He has other ones on the Parsha. Buy whatever book resonates with you. Don't buy something that has long, long essays that you're going to fall asleep reading. Don't do that. Buy something that has little short tidbits that you can read. And then when you read it, say it over at your Shabbos table. Say it over at somebody else's Shabbos table, because that's what makes Shabbos beautiful. The fact that we can take the Torah, we can learn the Torah, it inspires us, we can inspire other people. And if we inspire other people, we can inspire the world. Thank you, everybody. I want you to know just how much your participation to my shiur means to me. And I'm so grateful that you come and be part of it. And please feel free to unmute yourselves and we can share some words.
2 thumbs, Rabbi.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. So
Beautiful.
Thank you very much, Rabbi.
thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi Diamond.
Thank
Shekorach.
It's
Thank
more
you.
than thank you. Make our life richer. Looking forward Shabbat, and I'm doing exactly what you're saying. I have a beautiful parsha for every week, additional to the weekly, and it's amazing. You're right. I can understand why you become a rabbi, a teacher. You are gifted, and we are privileged to knowing you, how you spread all your knowledge upon us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That's such kind words. I really appreciate that, Marika. But really, again, pick whatever book. I'm not getting any kickback from Rabbi Sachs's foundation. Pick something, whatever language is easiest for you. But do that and share a word of Torah around your Shabbos table, around your friend's Shabbos table. Enhance your Shabbos, because that's what it's about.
Thank you, Rabbi. It's been a real privilege to join you.
Thank you very much in Calgary. Wow. I've been invited to spend Shabbos in Calgary. What about that? The Silvers.
Anytime.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you guys' last name may be Silver, but that's a golden invitation. I'm telling you right now.
We'll keep hugging you until you actually come.
Okay, I appreciate that. Listen, I when we were first married, before we had kids, that was one of the first trips we did, which is Western Canada. We flew to Calgary, rented a car, and drove to Vancouver. And that was one of the most spectacular trips of our lifetime. Ever. I don't know if anybody's ever done it. If you haven't done it, you should definitely do it and stay over at the Silvers, because they're just
Absolutely.
Anytime.
Good night.
Good night, everybody. Thank you
night.
so much.
Take
Good
care.
night. Be well, everyone. Be well. Have a great week. Bye.
Best regards to Charlotte. See you on Shabbos.
Thank you. Say hi to Queenie. Good night, everyone.
Thank
All
you,
the best.
Rabbi.
Bye-bye.